You wake up, the light of morning slipping through the curtain and spilling across your face. The room is quiet, except for your own breathing. And in that quiet, you feel the first tug of thought. Will today be another day of pretending? Another day of putting on the mask, carrying yourself in a way that others expect, not in the way you truly are. You lie there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, and notice how heavy that thought feels. It is as if the weight of the world is pressing on your chest before you even get out of bed. And yet, there is also another possibility, one you may have ignored too many times. You could rise not as the person the world demands, but as the person you already are, beneath the layers of performance. Loving yourself begins with that small recognition. You are already enough. You have always been enough. This isn't about becoming selfish or building a wall against others. It is about seeing yourself as a human being who deserves dignity, kindness, and respect just as much as anyone else. Too often, you have measured your value through the eyes of others, teachers, friends, bosses, lovers, hoping that their approval might finally fill the gap you feel inside. But every time you hand them that power, you give away a piece of your own freedom. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what if your worth did not depend on their applause? What if your value was as natural and undeniable as your breath? The truth is, it already is. You do not need to prove yourself endlessly. You do not need to wait until you have achieved some shining milestone to begin treating yourself as worthy of love. You were born with that worth. You carry it in your scars, in your laughter, in the way you keep moving forward even after life has knocked you down. Of course, the world rarely teaches you this. From early childhood, you are taught comparison. Who scores higher? Who looks better? Who earns more? Every magazine cover, every curated image on social media whispers the same message. You must be improved, polished, perfected. You learn to chase an ideal that was never real in the first place. And so, without realizing, you begin to abandon yourself. Each time you say yes when your heart screams no. Each time you laugh at a joke that cuts you inside. Each time you swallow your truth for the sake of comfort, you step further from your own center. But imagine reversing that pattern. Imagine standing in front of the mirror and seeing not the flaws that advertisements want you to fix, but the quiet resilience in your eyes. The eyes of someone who has survived difficult seasons, who has endured loss, rejection, disappointment, and still wakes up ready to try again. You see the lines of growth, the subtle signs that you are not the same as you once were, and that is something to honor. Loving yourself means beginning to tell the truth, even if only to yourself. It means asking, am I being real right now? When you nod along in a conversation, though you disagree, that is abandonment. When you say yes to the extra project, even though you are exhausted, that is abandonment. When you silence your emotions just so you will not appear too much, that is abandonment. And the more you abandon yourself, the smaller you feel, as if your voice is fading into the background of your own life. So here is the first act of awakening. Stop abandoning yourself. Stand with yourself even when it feels uncomfortable. Choose honesty over approval. Choose truth over performance. Does that mean you will stop caring about people? No. It simply means you will no longer betray yourself just to stay in their good graces. There is a difference between connection and dependence. True connection allows you to remain whole while you care for others. Dependence asks you to shrink so that someone else can feel big. When you begin standing in your truth, you will notice subtle shifts. Conversations feel lighter because you no longer carry the weight of pretending. Rest feels deeper because you no longer punish yourself for needing it. Even your posture changes. You walk taller, speak with more clarity, feel less afraid of silence. People might notice, and some may not like it. They may prefer the version of you that was easier to control, easier to predict. That is not your burden. Your responsibility is to your own integrity. Those who truly love you will celebrate your honesty, not resist it. Now, let's speak to the fear that often keeps you from embracing yourself fully. Many people avoid self-reflection because they are afraid of what they might find. They believe that if they look too closely, they will discover something broken beyond repair. But the deeper you look, the more you realize the opposite is true. You uncover resilience in your scars. You uncover wisdom in your mistakes. You uncover dignity in your struggles. When you see yourself clearly, you find not weakness, but a survivor, an adapter, a creator. That person deserves love, not judgment. To strengthen this awakening, start with small practices. Each morning, ask, how can I stand with myself today? Perhaps it means declining an invitation when you are drained. Perhaps it means speaking honestly instead of hiding your feelings. Perhaps it simply means looking in the mirror and offering yourself a smile, even when you feel like anything but smiling. These are not grand gestures. They are daily commitments. Self-love is not built in moments of inspiration alone. It is built in repetition, in the small choices that tell your heart it matters. Consider how often you compare yourself to others. Comparison is poison to authenticity. When you measure your progress by someone else's journey, you forget your own. You overlook the unique challenges you have faced, the personal victories you have achieved. Life is not a race, it is a path, and no one else is walking your exact road. So every time you catch yourself comparing, pause and return to your truth. Ask, what is real for me right now? What do I value? That is the only standard worth keeping. Shame may rise as you do this work. Shame tells you that you are not enough, that if people knew the real you, they would turn away. But shame is a liar. Your flaws do not make you unworthy. They make you human. Hiding your story only deepens the wound. Honoring your full self, both the light and the shadow, loosens shame's grip. The more honest you become, the more peace you create inside. Think about how different your days would feel if you no longer needed approval to feel valuable. You would stop chasing praise as proof of your worth. You would stop apologizing for resting. You would stop explaining every choice as if your needs were crimes to be defended. You would begin to feel whole, and that wholeness would be the foundation of a new kind of confidence. Quiet, steady, unshakable. Let's bring this idea into the real world. Picture a moment when you are asked to take on extra work. Your instinct says you are already stretched thin, but the old habit of pleasing others tells you to agree. This time, you pause. You ask yourself, am I abandoning myself if I say yes? And you realize you are. So you choose differently. You say no respectfully, and you hold your ground. At first, guilt might surge, but with time, pride replaces it. You stood by yourself, and that builds trust. Or imagine being in a conversation where everyone laughs at a comment that stings you. The old you would smile along to avoid conflict, but the awakened you takes a breath and says, "That doesn't sit right with me." The room might grow quiet, but you notice how alive you feel in that honesty. You notice how your heart no longer shrinks. That is the essence of loving yourself. You refuse to abandon your truth, even in small moments. These examples may sound simple, yet they are revolutionary. They shift the way you see yourself and the way you live, because every time you choose honesty, every time you stand with yourself, you rewrite the story you carry inside. You are no longer the character waiting for someone else to rescue you. You become the author, guiding your own narrative with courage. Remember, awakening self-worth is not about perfection. You will drift at times. You will forget. That is okay. What matters is that you come back, again and again. You choose yourself, until one day, it feels natural, like breathing. Until one day, your life feels like home instead of a performance. This is the foundation. When you awaken your self-worth, you open the door to every other change. You stop looking outside for validation. You stop chasing after approval that never satisfies. Instead, you begin to draw strength from within. And that strength transforms everything. Your relationships, your work, your health, your peace. It all begins here, with the decision to treat yourself as someone worthy of love, someone you will never abandon again. You notice how quickly the inner critic speaks. Before you even leave the house, it can whisper harsh judgments. You're already behind. You should have done better yesterday. Everyone else is doing more than you. These voices don't arrive with warning, and they don't always sound dramatic. Sometimes they're disguised as small observations. The way your shirt fits, the way you phrased a sentence, the way you feel after scrolling through someone else's photos. And yet, each one cuts into your confidence like 1,000 tiny blades. This inner dialogue forms so early in life that you may mistake it for truth. If you grew up in an environment where criticism was frequent, or where love felt conditional, your brain learned to echo those patterns. You may have internalized the idea that you are only valuable when you perform, achieve, or please over time. Those messages calcify into background noise. But here is the freeing reality. You can challenge them. You can rewrite the script. A thought is not a verdict. It's not a sentence handed down in a courtroom. A thought is simply a suggestion. Some suggestions are useful. Remember to lock the door. Prepare for tomorrow's meeting. But many are not. You're never going to succeed. You're unlovable. Just because a thought shows up doesn't mean you must obey it. This is where your power lies, choosing which thoughts deserve your attention and which deserve dismissal. So how do you silence, or at least soften, the critic? Not by force, not by pretending to be endlessly positive. The critic grows stronger when you try to deny it, like a shadow that lengthens the more you chase the light. Instead, you quiet it by answering back with balance and honesty. Imagine someone says to you, "You failed again." Instead of collapsing, you breathe and respond, "Yes, this moment is hard, but it doesn't define me. I'm still learning." That simple shift changes the entire emotional landscape. You can begin practicing this skill right now. Think of a recent moment when you felt discouraged. What was the sentence that echoed in your head? Write it down. Then, ask yourself 3 questions. Where is the evidence? Would I say this to a friend? Am I looking at the whole picture or only one flaw? Already, The critic loses some of its authority because you've moved from automatic reaction to conscious examination. It helps to create a library of replacement phrases, truthful, grounding statements that meet negativity with steadiness. For example, I made a mistake, but mistakes are part of growth. I feel overwhelmed, and I can still take one small step. I don't need to be perfect to be worthy. These phrases are not sugar-coated affirmations. They are anchors. They remind your nervous system that you are safe, that you are capable, that the storm will pass. Consider how differently your day unfolds when you catch just one thought. Let's say your inner voice says, "You'll never be good enough." In the past, you might have let that statement spiral, shaping your mood for hours. But now, you pause. You whisper, "I am doing my best today, and that is enough." The shift might feel small, but it accumulates. Each interruption breaks the critic's momentum. Over weeks and months, you begin to notice that your baseline mood rises. You feel steadier, more resilient, less shaken by setbacks. There is another layer to this work: compassion. Many people try to silence the critic by replacing it with a drill sergeant voice. Stop being so weak. Stop thinking like that. But that only layers judgment on top of judgment. True healing comes when you offer yourself the gentleness you once craved from others. You don't fight the critic with more cruelty. You teach it, patiently, that a new voice has arrived, one that speaks in kindness, one that refuses to abandon you. Think of your inner child for a moment. Imagine them standing in front of you, perhaps scared, perhaps tired, perhaps unsure. Would you shout at them? Or would you kneel down, look them in the eye, and say, "You're safe with me. I'll help you through this"? That is the essence of silencing the critic. It's not a battle. It's a relationship shift. You become your own protector rather than your own bully. This shift transforms more than your mood. It transforms your actions. When your inner critic dominates, you hesitate. You stop yourself from applying for the opportunity, from speaking your opinion, from pursuing what matters. But when your inner voice becomes balanced, you begin to take more risks, not reckless ones, but grounded ones. You remember that imperfection is allowed, and so you move forward even with trembling hands. That's how growth happens, not from flawless execution, but from consistent attempts. Of course, some days the critic will roar louder than ever. Maybe after a rejection, a failure, or even for no clear reason at all. In those moments, it is easy to collapse back into old patterns. But these moments are also opportunities. Each time you respond differently, even if clumsily, you weaken the critic's grip. You teach your brain a new pathway. And the brain, marvelous in its plasticity, will strengthen the path you repeat most often. You may notice certain triggers, perhaps comparison on social media, perhaps conversations with specific people, perhaps moments of solitude when old stories resurface. Instead of avoiding these triggers entirely, approach them with awareness. Say to yourself, "I know the critic tends to show up here. I am ready to meet it with compassion." By anticipating the pattern, you rob it of surprise power. There is also great value in writing your thoughts down. A journal is not a place for perfect prose. It is a mirror. When you spill your inner critic onto the page, it loses some of its mystique. You see, in black and white, just how repetitive and exaggerated it often is. And in that clarity, you gain distance. You realize, this is not me. This is a story I've carried, and stories can be rewritten. Even your body can help in this practice. Notice how negative thoughts tighten your chest, clench your jaw, stiffen your shoulders. Now imagine pairing a compassionate phrase with a physical release. Breathe deeply, stretch slowly. Place your hand over your heart and whisper, "I'm here for you." This physical gesture teaches your nervous system that safety is present, that the critic's harshness is not the final authority. Remember, too, that negative thoughts are not always logical. They are often emotional reactions disguised as facts. Your mind may say, "You always mess up." Is that factually true? No. It is a feeling trying to masquerade as evidence. When you see it that way, you can respond with honesty. Sometimes I stumble, but I also succeed. I am capable of both. That kind of balanced statement creates steadiness. Over time, this practice builds a new identity. You stop seeing yourself as the victim of your thoughts and begin to see yourself as their guide. You realize you are not helpless against the critic. You are the one holding the microphone. You can choose which voice gets amplified and which voice fades into the background. That awareness is liberating. Picture this. You are about to give a presentation. The critic whispers, "You'll embarrass yourself." Instead of collapsing, you breathe and say, "I might be nervous, but I am prepared. I've handled challenges before, and I can handle this too." Then, you step onto the stage. Your hands may still shake, your voice may still tremble, but you do it anyway. And afterward, you realize the critic was wrong. That lived proof is more powerful than any affirmation, because you experienced it yourself. Some days, silencing the critic means speaking firmly. "That thought is not helping me. I won't feed it." Other days, it means speaking gently. "I'm hurting, and I deserve kindness right now." Both are valid. Both remind you that you are in charge of the conversation inside your head. The goal is not to eliminate all negative thoughts. That would be impossible and unnecessary. The goal is to change your relationship with them, to stop letting them dictate your identity, to stop treating them as absolute truth. You learn to meet them with awareness, respond with balance, and then return to your path. Imagine the freedom of walking through your day without constant self-attack. Imagine pursuing a goal without the weight of inner sabotage. Imagine resting without guilt because your mind finally agrees you are worthy of care. That is the gift of silencing the inner critic, not a silent mind, but a kind one. You deserve to become your own ally. You deserve to treat yourself with the same respect you offer others. Every time you practice, every time you choose a better thought, you reinforce that truth. Slowly, surely, you reshape the landscape of your inner world. And when your inner world changes, the outer world follows. You remember the first time fear stopped you. It might have been a classroom where your hand stayed glued to the desk, even though the answer sat waiting on your tongue. It might have been the job interview you skipped because your nerves made you feel unprepared. Or maybe it was something quieter, the call you never made, the dream you tucked away, the truth you swallowed. Fear has a way of freezing you at the edge of possibility. But here's what you may not realize. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is choosing to step forward even with fear sitting heavily on your chest. Building resilience is not about leaping tall buildings or running headlong into danger. It is about small, deliberate steps taken in the face of discomfort. Every time you act despite trembling hands, you teach yourself something crucial. You are stronger than the voice that says you cannot. And that knowledge, repeated through practice, becomes resilience. Think of resilience as a muscle. No one begins with unshakable strength. Muscles grow by being challenged, by facing resistance and adapting. In the same way, your inner strength grows through repeated encounters with fear and difficulty. You bend, you strain, and you rise again, slightly stronger than before. Over time, those small increments add up until what once felt impossible becomes part of your everyday courage. Begin with one step. Choose an area of life where fear has kept you still. Perhaps you've been postponing a conversation, or avoiding an opportunity, or holding back from expressing yourself. Ask, what is one small action I can take today to challenge this fear? It doesn't need to be dramatic. It only needs to be real. If public speaking terrifies you, start by sharing your opinion in a small meeting. If vulnerability scares you, start by telling one trusted person how you really feel. Each small step is a deposit in your resilience account. And when you take that step, something subtle happens inside. Fear does not vanish, but it shifts. It no longer feels like an unbeatable wall. It feels like a hurdle you can climb with practice. You prove to yourself that fear is not fatal, that rejection is not the end, that stumbling does not erase your worth. This proof rewires your brain, teaching it that fear is not a stop sign, but a signal that growth is nearby. You may ask, why bother? Why keep pushing into discomfort when staying safe feels easier? The answer lies in the cost of avoidance. Each time you avoid, the world becomes smaller. Opportunities shrink. Confidence erodes. You begin to live inside a shrinking circle of what feels tolerable. But every time you act, the circle expands. You discover new capacities. You trust yourself more. You realize you can handle far more than you once believed. Resilience also means learning how to recover when things don't go as planned. Because let's be honest, not every step will lead to success. Some will lead to stumbles, to awkwardness, to failure, and that is okay. Resilience says, I can be knocked down and still rise. Think of children learning to walk. They fall again and again, and yet they never label themselves failures. They simply get up and try once more. That same spirit still lives in you. The question is whether you will let it breathe. A powerful way to practice resilience is through reframing. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Ask, what can I learn from this? The shift moves you from victimhood to growth. It doesn't erase pain, but it extracts meaning from it. A rejection becomes redirection. A mistake becomes feedback. A setback becomes training. This mindset does not deny reality. It empowers you within it. Consider also how resilience is supported by routine. It's not only about dramatic acts of bravery, it's about daily consistency. When you commit to small disciplines, exercising, journaling, meditating, resting, you create a stable base. So when storms come, you are not scrambling from zero. You already have anchors holding you steady. Resilience is less about sudden bursts of strength and more about cultivated stability. Another truth, resilience grows in community. Yes, you must take your own steps, but you do not need to walk alone. Surround yourself with people who remind you of your capacity when you forget. People who hold you accountable to your best self. People who celebrate your progress instead of magnifying your fear. Alone, resilience is possible. Together, it becomes amplified. You may still feel resistance rising within. What if I fail? What if I look foolish? These are normal fears. But here's a secret. Everyone feels them. The difference between those who remain stuck and those who move forward is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act anyway. Failure is not the end of your story. Quitting is. Looking foolish is not permanent. Missing opportunities because of fear, however, can last a lifetime. Let's ground this with a story. Imagine a woman who dreams of starting her own bakery. For years, she hesitates, fearing rejection, fearing debt, fearing judgment. One day, she decides to begin small, selling pastries at a local market. The first day, half her batch remains unsold. The critic in her head screams, "You see, this was a mistake." But instead of collapsing, she reframes. She asks, "What did I learn today?" She learns that cinnamon rolls sold fastest. She learns that her packaging needs improvement. She adjusts. By the third market, she sells out. That is resilience, not perfect success, but persistent learning. Resilience also asks you to embrace discomfort as a teacher. Growth rarely feels comfortable. It often feels awkward, tiring, even painful. But discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is a signal that you are stretching. Like muscles that ache after a workout, your spirit aches after growth. Instead of fearing that ache, you can learn to honor it as evidence of expansion. Think about your own life. Where have you already proven resilience? Perhaps in surviving heartbreak, or enduring illness, or navigating financial hardship. You may not have labeled it resilience at the time. You may have called it just getting through. But that very act was resilience. Acknowledging it now builds confidence that you can face future challenges too. Resilience is not about never breaking. It is about learning that even when you break, you can mend. You can rise with cracks that tell a story of survival. You can be both wounded and whole. This paradox is the beauty of resilience. It does not demand perfection, only persistence. Start noticing how you speak to yourself in moments of struggle. Do you say, "I can't handle this"? Or do you whisper, "This is hard, and I am learning"? That one word, "and," changes despair into resilience. It admits difficulty while affirming strength. It holds both truths at once. Practice resilience today in one small act. Make the call, share the opinion, try the new thing. And when fear shows up, greet it with curiosity instead of panic. Say, "I see you. You're here to remind me I'm growing." Then take the step anyway. That is how resilience is built, not in giant leaps, but in repeated ordinary acts of courage. And slowly, the balance shifts. Fear no longer rules you. Courage, even in tiny doses, becomes your default. You stop waiting for life to become easy before you act. You act, and in doing so, life becomes richer, fuller, more aligned. That is the gift of resilience. You become unshaken, not because storms stop coming, but because you know you can stand, you can bend, and you can rise again. You sit with the quiet discomfort of always putting yourself last. How many times have you agreed to something you didn't want, simply to avoid disappointing someone else? How often have you pushed through exhaustion to meet another demand, even when your body begged for rest? You tell yourself it's noble, it's generous, it's loving. But deep down, a part of you knows it's also neglect. You have been taught to prioritize everyone else's needs, and somewhere along the way, you lost sight of your own. Honoring your needs does not mean abandoning others. It means remembering that you, too, are a human being with limits, desires, and rights. Just as you would not expect a friend to run endlessly without pause. You cannot expect yourself to keep giving without replenishment. Loving yourself means recognizing that your needs matter, not as an afterthought, but as a foundation. Notice how guilt often rises when you try to care for yourself. That guilt whispers, "You're being selfish. You're letting people down." But guilt is not always a reliable compass. Sometimes guilt is just a signal that you're breaking an old pattern. For years, you may have equated worth with self-sacrifice. So of course it feels strange to rest, to say no, to put your well-being first. But strange is not wrong. Strange is simply new. Start by asking yourself a question you may rarely consider. What do I need right now? Not what do others expect. Not what looks impressive. Not what avoids conflict. Simply, what do I need? Perhaps the answer is food, rest, conversation, solitude, movement, stillness. Perhaps it is something bigger, like courage to pursue a dream or honesty in a relationship. Whatever arises, treat it with respect. Your needs are not inconveniences. They are signals of life. Imagine how different your day would feel if you honored those signals. Instead of ignoring hunger until your mood crashes, you pause and eat. Instead of scrolling late into the night while your body aches for sleep, you put down the phone and rest. Instead of bottling up frustration until it spills out sideways, you speak gently but firmly about what matters. Each of these acts might seem small, but together they declare, "My life is worthy of care." Consider the metaphor of an oxygen mask on an airplane. Flight attendants remind you, secure your own mask before helping others. Why? Because without air, you collapse. Without your strength, you cannot offer strength. This is not selfishness, it is survival. In the same way, your needs are oxygen. Meeting them enables you to love more fully, work more effectively, live more authentically. Ignoring them suffocates not only you, but also your ability to show up for the world. You might worry, if I prioritize myself, won't people think I'm cold? Won't I lose connections? But here's the paradox. Honoring your needs often deepens relationships. When you show up well-rested, authentic, and nourished, you offer presence instead of resentment. When you speak honestly about your limits, you invite trust instead of hidden frustration. People may resist at first, especially if they were used to your constant compliance. But the relationships that remain will be stronger, healthier, and more real. Begin practicing with boundaries around time. If your schedule is crammed with obligations, pause and ask, which of these truly align with my values and which drain me? Imagine choosing one commitment to release this week. Free that time for something that restores you. Reading, walking, cooking, resting. Notice how even one reclaimed hour changes your energy. From there, expand, slowly. You carve out a life that reflects your priorities, not just others' demands. Your needs also include emotional truth. How often do you downplay your feelings so others won't be uncomfortable? You might say, "It's fine." When it isn't, you might smile while hurting inside. But suppressing your truth only creates distance. Honoring your needs means admitting, at least to yourself, what you really feel. I'm tired. I'm anxious. I'm excited. I'm hopeful. Naming emotions doesn't make you weak. It makes you honest. And honesty is the soil where authentic connection grows. Let's imagine a scenario. You've been invited to a gathering after a long week. Part of you wants to see friends, but a deeper part longs for rest. In the past, you would have forced yourself to go, smiling through fatigue. This time, you pause. You listen inward. You realize your body's request is clear. Stay home. Recharge. So you politely decline, and you spend the evening in quiet restoration. The next morning, you wake with more energy, more clarity, more joy. That simple choice honored your needs, and the ripple effect is undeniable. Another scenario. At work, a colleague constantly interrupts you, piling tasks onto your plate. Old patterns would have you accept silently. But honoring your needs means setting a boundary. You might say, I can take on one of these tasks, but not all. At first, your voice may shake, but the more you practice, the steadier you become. And each time you stand for your needs, you reinforce self-trust. You show yourself that you can rely on you. It is worth noting that honoring your needs does not mean indulging every whim. Sometimes what you want in the moment conflicts with what you truly need. You might want to avoid a difficult conversation, but what you need is to speak. You might want to stay in comfort, but what you need is growth. Self-love is discerning between fleeting impulses and genuine needs. The more you listen inward, the clearer that distinction becomes. Self-respect also means protecting your energy from environments that drain you. Notice how you feel after spending time with certain people or places. Do you leave feeling lighter, supported, inspired? Or do you leave feeling smaller, exhausted, anxious? Your needs include the right to choose environments that nourish you. This doesn't mean cutting everyone out at the first sign of discomfort. It means noticing patterns and making conscious choices about where you invest your presence. There will be resistance, both inside and outside. Inside, you may feel the tug of guilt. Outside, some may push back when you stop meeting every demand. That's natural. People benefit when you abandon yourself. So of course they notice when you stop. But stay steady. The discomfort is temporary. The freedom is lasting. With time, your needs will feel less like burdens and more like guides. Remember, honoring your needs is not a luxury. It is not a reward for being productive enough. It is a necessity, as fundamental as breathing. You are not here to live as a machine of service, endlessly outputting. You are here as a human being, worthy of rest, of care, of authenticity. As you begin to honor yourself, you may notice subtle joy returning. A quiet meal enjoyed without rushing. A conversation where you spoke your truth. An evening where you chose rest without apology. These are not grand achievements, but they are profound. They mark the shift from abandonment to alignment. With practice, honoring your needs becomes second nature. You no longer ask, "Do I deserve this?" You know you do. You no longer bargain for permission. You grant it to yourself. And from that foundation, life begins to feel lighter, fuller, more true. So let today be the start. Pause, breathe, and ask, what do I need right now? Then honor the answer, however small. That one act is enough. Enough to begin, enough to matter, enough to remind you, you are worthy of care, here and now. You sit at the edge of your day, coffee in hand, wondering why life always feels like it's rushing past. Each week blurs into the next, filled with obligations, distractions, and moments of exhaustion. And yet, if you pause and look closely, there is a quiet truth waiting for you. Life is built not only on big choices, but also on the small rituals that repeat each day. The way you wake up, the way you treat your body, the way you speak to yourself, the way you close your eyes at night. These daily practices shape not just your mood, but the entire trajectory of your life. Daily rituals of care are not luxuries. They are the scaffolding of self-love. They whisper into your subconscious, reminding you over and over that you matter, that your well-being deserves priority, that your needs are not to be dismissed. Without them, your energy leaks away. With them, your foundation strengthens. The question becomes, which rituals will you choose to carry you? Start with the morning. How you begin sets the tone for everything that follows. Maybe you wake and immediately scroll, absorbing the noise of other people's lives before you've even tuned into your own. That habit leaves you reactive, already behind, already comparing. But imagine instead starting the day with stillness. You open your eyes, take a deep breath, and ask gently, "What do I need today?" Perhaps you stretch for 5 minutes, or sip your drink slowly, or write down 3 intentions. The act doesn't need to be long. It only needs to be deliberate. There is power in repetition. When you perform a ritual consistently, your brain begins to associate it with safety and calm. Just as a child feels soothed by bedtime stories, you can soothe your adult self through steady practices. Maybe it's lighting a candle while you journal, or taking a short walk every afternoon, or placing your phone aside during meals. Each repeated action is a vote for your own worth. Notice, too, how rituals provide rhythm in times of chaos. Life will always throw unpredictability at you. Work stress, family demands, unexpected challenges. But when you anchor yourself in daily care, you create an inner island of stability. No matter how stormy the seas outside, you know you will breathe, you will move, you will reflect, you will rest. That predictability reduces anxiety and increases resilience. Self-care rituals are not only physical, they are also mental. Consider how often your inner dialogue drifts into criticism or doubt. What if you created a daily practice of speaking kindly to yourself? Each night, you could write 1 sentence of acknowledgement. Today, I tried. Today, I kept going. Today, I mattered. Over weeks, this becomes a chorus in your mind, softening the critic, strengthening the ally. Your rituals may include nourishment, eating slowly instead of rushing, choosing foods that support your energy rather than deplete it, drinking water before another cup of caffeine. These are small, but they accumulate. The body you inhabit responds to these choices not only physically but emotionally. You feel cared for, respected, steady. Rest, too, is a ritual often neglected. So many people wear exhaustion like a badge of honor, equating productivity with worth. But deprivation erodes both health and joy. Loving yourself means scheduling rest, not as an afterthought, but as a priority. Imagine creating a nightly wind-down ritual, dimming lights, reading, reflecting, allowing your body to understand it is safe to release the day. That rhythm signals to your nervous system you are cared for. There is also the ritual of movement, not punishing exercise done out of shame, but movement chosen out of love. A walk in fresh air, a stretch between tasks, a dance in your living room to your favorite song. These moments remind you that your body is not an enemy to be corrected, but an ally to be cherished. Creativity can be ritual as well. Doodling, writing, cooking, singing. Acts of expression that remind you you are more than a machine of output. They remind you of your humanity, your ability to make beauty even in ordinary spaces. Think of one ritual you can introduce today. Maybe it is as simple as pausing before each meal to breathe, to notice the gift in front of you. Maybe it is writing down one thing you appreciate about yourself before bed. These are not grand gestures. They are quiet revolutions. You may wonder, but I don't have time. The truth is, you don't need hours. A ritual can take 30 seconds if done with intention. The point is not the length, it is the message. Each ritual says, I am worth pausing for. I am worth consistency. I am worth care. The challenge is not starting, it is continuing. Enthusiasm can carry you for a week, maybe 2. But resilience in ritual is built by persistence. You will have days where you forget, where you rush, where you dismiss it as unimportant. That's okay. What matters is returning again and again, until it becomes woven into the fabric of your days. And here is the secret. Rituals compound. The small act of stretching in the morning leads to more energy. That energy leads to clearer decisions. Those decisions lead to better boundaries. Better boundaries lead to healthier relationships. A single thread of ritual can ripple through the entire tapestry of your life. Consider how athletes, artists, and leaders rely on ritual. It is not because they are extraordinary. It is because they understand that extraordinary results come from ordinary actions repeated. You, too, can harness this, not to impress the world, but to nourish your soul. So ask yourself, what are my anchors? What are the practices that bring me back to myself when life pulls me away? Name them, protect them, let them shape the rhythm of your days. With time, your life will no longer feel like a blur of obligations. It will feel like a song, steady, rhythmic, intentional. Each ritual, a note reminding you of your worth, your dignity, your right to be cared for. And as those notes repeat, day after day, they compose a melody of love that no one can take from you. You remember the times you stayed silent, even when your heart screamed no. The invitations you accepted, though you longed for rest. The favors you agreed to, though you felt drained. The conversations where you nodded, though every cell inside you disagreed. Each time, you told yourself it was easier this way. Less conflict, less disappointment, less risk of rejection. But afterward, the heaviness lingered, because deep down you knew, in saying yes to them, you had said no to yourself. Drawing healthy boundaries is one of the clearest, yet most difficult expressions of self-love. It requires you to acknowledge that your energy, your time, your emotions are finite. You cannot pour endlessly without refilling. You cannot absorb every request, every demand, every expectation without consequence. Without boundaries, resentment grows like weeds. With boundaries, your life becomes a garden, protected, intentional, nourishing. Think of a boundary not as a wall, but as a fence with a gate. A wall blocks everything out, even love and connection. A fence allows you to decide what comes in and what stays out. It is about choice, not isolation. And that choice is what keeps you safe and whole. Many people struggle with boundaries because they fear rejection. They worry that saying no means losing love. But real love cannot thrive in the absence of boundaries. Without them, connection becomes performance. You give until you are depleted, and the relationship rests on false ground. True intimacy requires honesty, and honesty requires limits. Begin by noticing where you feel resentment. Resentment is often a sign of a boundary crossed. Maybe you feel it when someone interrupts your rest. Maybe when a friend dismisses your feelings. Maybe when work consumes your weekends. Ask yourself, What would protect my peace in this situation? The answer becomes the seed of a boundary. Boundaries take many forms. Some are physical. I need personal space. Some are emotional. I will not engage in conversations that demean me. Some are time-based. I am unavailable after this hour. Some are digital. I won't respond to messages during dinner. Each one is a declaration that your well-being matters. But setting them is only half the work. The harder half is holding them. People will test boundaries, sometimes unintentionally, sometimes deliberately. They may push, guilt, or question. And in those moments, your voice may shake. You may feel selfish. But remember, every time you hold a boundary, you teach both yourself and others that your dignity is non-negotiable. You can start small. Practice with low-stakes situations. If someone offers you food you don't want, instead of accepting out of politeness, smile and decline. If you need quiet, let a family member know you're taking a short break. These small acts build the muscle of self-respect. Then, when bigger challenges come, you have the strength to stand firm. There is power in language. Boundaries don't need to be harsh. They can be firm, yet kind. I appreciate the invitation, but I'll have to pass this time. I value our relationship, but I need to end this conversation now. I can help with this task, but not with all of them. These phrases are respectful, yet clear. They communicate your limits without apology. Notice, too, how your body responds when you uphold a boundary. At first, you may feel tension, but afterward, relief washes in. That relief is the voice of your authentic self, whispering, "Thank you for standing with me." Over time, that relief grows into pride. You begin to trust yourself again, to believe that you won't abandon your own needs for the comfort of others. Boundaries are also about what you allow inside. Pay attention to the media you consume, the conversations you engage in, the environments you step into. If something consistently drains you or diminishes your sense of worth, consider drawing a line. You don't need to expose yourself to every influence. Protect your mental landscape the same way you protect your home. Of course, some relationships will resist your boundaries. People who benefited from your compliance may accuse you of being distant, cold, or selfish. Let them. Their discomfort is not proof of your wrongdoing. It is proof of change. Healthy people will adjust. Unhealthy ones may fall away. Either way, you gain freedom. Boundaries also create space for joy. When you stop overextending, you reclaim energy for what matters: your passions, your growth, your rest, your relationships. Instead of living on autopilot, you live with intention. Instead of being pulled in every direction, you move with clarity. Consider a scenario. You have a friend who constantly vents for hours, leaving you emotionally drained. Without boundaries, you endure it silently, growing resentful. With boundaries, you say, "I care about you, but I can only talk for half an hour today." The first time you say it, your stomach may twist, but afterward, you realize you feel lighter, more balanced. You showed up for your friend without abandoning yourself. That balance is the essence of healthy connection. Boundaries are not punishments. They are not about controlling others. They are about guiding your own energy. You cannot stop people from making demands, but you can decide how you respond. That decision is your power. Over time, setting boundaries shifts your entire identity. You no longer see yourself as someone who must always yield, always agree, always sacrifice. You see yourself as someone worthy of protection, someone whose life has value, someone who deserves respect, and that identity becomes the foundation for deeper confidence. Remember, boundaries will never make everyone happy. That's not their purpose. Their purpose is to keep you aligned with your truth, to ensure that you live from authenticity instead of performance. And authenticity is far more valuable than universal approval. So pause and ask, where do I feel drained? Where do I feel resentful? Where do I feel small? The answers to those questions reveal the places where boundaries are needed. Start there. Speak clearly, stand firmly, and watch as your life expands, not because you built walls, but because you finally chose gates. You wake up in the morning, and your first instinct is to check what isn't working: the undone tasks, the unresolved arguments, the long list of ways you believe you fall short. It's easy to live with a constant spotlight on flaws, overlooking what is quietly growing well inside you. Gratitude offers a different light, one that softens the shadows and reveals the progress you rarely pause to notice. Gratitude is not about ignoring pain or pretending life is perfect. It is about choosing to recognize what exists alongside the pain, the lessons you've learned, the strengths you've built, the moments that carry meaning, even in difficulty. When you practice gratitude toward yourself, you start to see yourself not just as a collection of flaws, but as a living, breathing story of resilience and growth. Think of gratitude as a lens. Through one lens, everything looks incomplete. You measure your worth against what's missing. Through another, you see the small victories, the time you stood up for yourself, the day you rested when your body asked, the choice to keep going despite fear. That lens doesn't erase struggle, but it reminds you that you are more than your struggles. Too often, people save gratitude for extraordinary occasions, a big win, a milestone, a celebration. But gratitude is most transformative when practiced daily, in ordinary moments. Thank yourself for sending that message you avoided. Thank yourself for leaving a toxic environment. Thank yourself for holding back hurtful words when anger burned. These are small acts, but each is a quiet revolution. Why does gratitude matter for self-love? Because criticism alone cannot build a healthy relationship with yourself. If you only focus on what's wrong, you teach your mind to treat you as an adversary. Gratitude shifts the relationship. It makes you your own ally. It reminds you that even on your hardest days, you still show up, still learn, still care. Consider how gratitude changes the narrative of your past. Instead of replaying mistakes as proof of failure, you begin to see them as proof of growth. You say, yes, I stumbled, but I also got back up. Yes, I struggled, but I also adapted. Yes, I didn't know then, but I learned. That perspective transforms regret into resilience. Gratitude also strengthens your resilience for the future. When you regularly acknowledge what you've already survived, you carry evidence of your strength into new challenges. You don't face uncertainty as a blank slate. You face it with the memory of past victories, however small. That memory whispers, you've done hard things before. You can do them again. How do you begin this practice? Start simple. Each day, write down one thing you appreciate about yourself. Not about your possessions, not about external achievements, but about your character, your effort, your growth. I am grateful that I showed patience. I am grateful that I chose rest. I am grateful that I kept trying. These small notes accumulate, reshaping your self-image. You may feel resistance. The inner critic might sneer. You don't deserve gratitude until you fix everything. Ignore that voice. Gratitude is not a reward for perfection. It is fuel for progress. The more you practice it, the more momentum you create for healing and growth. Gratitude also expands into relationships. When you appreciate yourself, you stop competing with others for worth. You stop resenting their success because you are no longer starved for validation. You can celebrate others while still honoring yourself. This balance makes connection deeper and freer. Imagine two paths. On one, you walk burdened by constant self-criticism. Every step feels heavy. On the other, you walk with gratitude as your companion. The weight doesn't disappear, but you notice the flowers along the way, the strength in your legs, the persistence of your steps. Which journey feels lighter? Which one would you rather live? Another way to cultivate gratitude is through reflection at the end of the day. Before you sleep, recall 3 moments you handled well. Maybe you listened to a friend with patience. Maybe you resisted the urge to overwork. Maybe you allowed yourself to laugh even when stress lingered. These moments remind you that progress is happening quietly, steadily. Gratitude is also powerful in the face of struggle. When life feels overwhelming, gratitude becomes an anchor. You don't deny the difficulty, but you say, even here, I can acknowledge my breath, my persistence, my courage to face another day. That acknowledgement does not solve everything, but it steadies you enough to keep moving. There's a paradox to gratitude. The more you practice it, the more reasons you find to continue. The act of noticing creates more to notice. The act of appreciating deepens appreciation. It's a cycle that shifts you from scarcity to abundance. Not abundance of possessions, but abundance of self-worth. Some people confuse gratitude with complacency. They fear that if they appreciate where they are, they'll stop striving. But true gratitude doesn't stall growth, it fuels it. When you recognize what's good, you gain energy to build on it. You move from a place of fullness rather than emptiness. You grow not because you hate who you are, but because you value yourself enough to expand. Think of an athlete training. If they only focus on weaknesses, they burn out. But if they celebrate each improvement, the extra mile, the faster sprint, the stronger lift, they build confidence and motivation. Your inner growth works the same way. Gratitude marks your progress and motivates you to continue. One of the deepest forms of gratitude is toward the version of you that survived your hardest seasons. The one who endured heartbreak, who faced rejection, who kept breathing when life felt unbearable. That version of you may not have been perfect, but they carried you here. They deserve your thanks. They deserve your compassion. So pause. Place your hand on your chest. Whisper, "Thank you for not giving up, for holding on, for getting me here." That simple act reconnects you with the truth. You are not broken. You are becoming. And as you continue, gratitude will weave itself into your days, not as a forced ritual, but as a natural rhythm. You'll find yourself noticing small joys, acknowledging quiet strengths, and treating yourself with the respect you always deserved. Gratitude is not a finish line. It is a practice, a way of seeing, a way of living. And with every thank you you offer to yourself, you build a life rooted not in criticism, but in appreciation. There comes a point when you realize no one else can hand you happiness. Not a partner, not a promotion, not a stroke of luck. People can add joy to your life, but they cannot be the foundation of your peace. That responsibility rests with you, and while it may feel heavy, It is also profoundly liberating, because once you claim it, you are no longer waiting, no longer begging, no longer dependent on the unpredictable tides of others. Happiness begins when you decide to stop outsourcing it. You've probably felt the pull of waiting for someone to apologize before you allow yourself peace, waiting for circumstances to improve before you allow yourself rest, waiting for validation before you allow yourself pride. But the waiting never ends, because life and people rarely deliver on your timeline. So the cycle continues, and your joy remains trapped in other people's hands. Taking responsibility for your happiness doesn't mean you ignore pain or pretend everything is fine. It means you stop assigning blame for how you feel. It means when frustration rises, you pause and ask, what choice can I make right now that honors me? That question shifts the focus inward, not in a way that excuses harmful behavior from others, but in a way that restores your power to respond. Consider this. If you constantly say, "They make me miserable," you give away control. But if you say, "I feel miserable when I tolerate this dynamic, and I can choose differently," you begin to reclaim agency. That shift in language is the difference between being a victim of life and being an active participant in shaping it. Happiness isn't a static state. It's not a permanent smile or endless positivity. It's the ongoing practice of choosing alignment over abandonment, choosing to rest when your body asks, even if the world tells you to hustle, choosing to speak honestly, even if silence feels safer, choosing to let go of environments that shrink you, even if leaving feels uncertain. Some days, that choice will feel small. Maybe it's stepping outside for fresh air instead of scrolling through negativity. Maybe it's making a meal that nourishes you instead of punishing your body with deprivation. Maybe it's telling yourself, "I matter." Even when self-doubt is loud, each choice builds on the last, and over time, they weave into a foundation of well-being that no one can easily shake. Of course, there's a part of you that resists. It whispers. It's easier to let others decide. It's easier to blame them for my unhappiness. And yes, it can feel easier, until you realize that blaming others still leaves you stuck, powerless, waiting for change that may never come. Responsibility feels harder in the moment, but in the long run, it's lighter. It frees you from dependency. You can see this in relationships. When you believe someone else must constantly make you happy, you put them in an impossible position. They will disappoint you, not because they don't care, but because no human can carry that weight. But when you take responsibility for your own happiness, you bring fullness into the relationship. You stop demanding they fix what they didn't break. You start relating from wholeness instead of emptiness. Happiness also grows when you identify the beliefs that keep you stuck. Maybe you believe you don't deserve joy until you've achieved enough. Maybe you believe happiness is selfish, that suffering is more noble. Maybe you believe you're too broken, too late, too far gone. These beliefs act like chains, and the first step to breaking them is noticing them. Once you see them, you can begin to ask, is this belief true, or is it just familiar? So much unhappiness lingers because we confuse familiarity with truth. If you grew up around criticism, you may believe you don't deserve kindness. If you were rewarded only for achievements, you may believe your worth depends on constant doing. But happiness does not grow from these scripts. It grows when you question them, rewrite them, and create space for a new narrative. Ask yourself, What actually makes me feel alive? What gives me energy instead of draining it? What quiet moments feel like peace to me? These questions help you differentiate between what the world tells you should make you happy and what truly does. For some, it's time in nature. For others, it's creative expression. For many, it's simply permission to rest without guilt. Happiness looks different for everyone, but the common thread is honesty. You cannot build it on lies about what you want. You will face resistance from others, too, when you stop sacrificing your happiness for their comfort. Some may call you selfish. Some may try to guilt you back into old roles. But remember, their discomfort is not your signal to abandon yourself. Your responsibility is to live in alignment, not to keep everyone else unbothered. The people who love you will adjust. The ones who don't were never invested in your wholeness. Taking responsibility also means recognizing the difference between comfort and happiness. Comfort can keep you stuck in familiar pain, staying in a draining job because it's predictable, staying in an unhealthy relationship because it's known. Happiness requires discomfort at first, the courage to leave, to speak, to change. That discomfort is temporary, but the freedom it creates is lasting. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. If nothing changes, will you feel proud of how you treated yourself? Or will you regret waiting for someone else to choose you, waiting for life to get easier, waiting for permission to be happy? The future is shaped by the choices you make today, not by the rescue you hope will arrive. Practical tools can help solidify this responsibility. Try journaling with prompts like, where am I blaming others for my feelings? What action could I take instead? Or, what simple choice today would bring me peace? These questions guide you back to yourself, again and again. You may stumble. Some days, you'll still blame, still wait, still abandon yourself. That's human. The point is not perfection, it's practice. Each time you return, you strengthen the belief that your happiness belongs to you. And when you truly believe it, something shifts. You stop waiting for apologies that may never come. You stop depending on praise to feel worthy. You stop holding your breath for life to get easier before you allow yourself to breathe. Instead, you exhale. You choose. You take ownership. Happiness, in the end, is less about chasing and more about allowing. Allowing yourself to feel worthy now. Allowing yourself to rest now. Allowing yourself to speak truth now. It is built moment by moment, decision by decision. And every time you choose alignment, you choose happiness, not as a reward, but as a right. You carry memories that sting, times you spoke too harshly, choices you regret, chances you missed. They echo late at night, whispering, why did you do that? Why weren't you better? Why couldn't you see then what you see now? And in those whispers, shame takes root. Shame tells you that you are defined by your past mistakes, that you will always be that person. But shame is wrong. You are not frozen in the version of yourself who stumbled. You are a living, evolving human being, and part of learning to love yourself is forgiving your past self. Forgiveness is not about erasing memory or pretending harm didn't happen. It is about releasing the grip of self-condemnation. It is telling yourself, I will not keep punishing you for what you did when you didn't know better. You cannot heal by beating yourself with the same stick forever. Healing happens when you extend compassion to the parts of you that were simply trying to survive with the tools they had at the time. Think back to an earlier version of yourself. Picture them, maybe younger, maybe more naive, maybe overwhelmed. See how they carried wounds you didn't fully understand, how they made choices out of fear, loneliness, or confusion. Do they deserve endless punishment, or do they deserve understanding? If you can see their humanity, you can begin to forgive. Forgiving your past self requires honesty. You cannot gloss over what happened. You must admit it. I hurt someone with my words. I ignored my own needs. I stayed in a situation too long. These admissions are not meant to trap you. They are meant to free you. Because once you name them, you can also name the growth that followed. I learned to communicate differently. I learned to set boundaries. I learned to recognize red flags. Every regret carries a lesson if you are willing to look. The inner critic will protest. It will say, if you forgive, you'll become careless. You'll repeat the same mistakes. But the opposite is true. Forgiveness doesn't erase accountability. It deepens it. When you forgive, you integrate the lesson instead of hiding from it. You move forward with more wisdom, not less. One practical way to do this is through letter writing. Write to your younger self. Tell them what you understand now that they didn't. Thank them for surviving, for trying, for keeping you alive through confusion. Offer them the compassion they didn't know how to give themselves. This practice can soften shame and create a bridge between who you were and who you are becoming. You can also practice self-forgiveness through reframing language. Instead of saying, I ruined everything, try, I made mistakes and I learned from them. Instead of, I wasted years, say, I grew through years of experience that shaped me into who I am today. Language matters. It shapes the way your brain processes memory. With each reframe, you loosen shame's grip. Forgiving your past self also means recognizing that you were influenced by forces larger than you. Family patterns, cultural expectations, lack of guidance, all of these shaped your choices. That doesn't excuse harm, but it explains it. And when you understand the context, you can offer compassion without excusing responsibility. Consider how holding on to unforgiveness drains you. It is like carrying a backpack filled with stones, every regret a rock weighing you down. You may have carried it so long, you forgot what freedom feels like. But imagine setting it down. Imagine walking lighter, breathing easier, knowing that your past is part of you, but not the whole of you. That release is what forgiveness offers. Forgiveness also changes how you see others. When you soften toward your own humanity, you naturally soften toward theirs. You realize everyone is carrying scars. Everyone has acted from fear. Everyone has a past they wish they could rewrite. This doesn't mean you accept harmful behavior. It means you understand it. And that understanding allows you to set boundaries without bitterness, to walk away without hate. Sometimes the hardest part of forgiveness is believing you deserve it. You may feel unworthy, convinced that your mistakes disqualify you from love. But consider this. If a dear friend came to you with the same regret, would you condemn them forever? Or would you hold their hand and remind them they are more than their worst moment? Offer yourself that same grace. There will be days when the old guilt resurfaces. You may feel a pang of shame out of nowhere. In those moments, gently remind yourself, that was me then. This is me now. I am allowed to grow beyond my past. Say it as many times as needed until the truth sinks deeper than the shame. Another practice is symbolic release. Write down the mistakes you cannot stop replaying. Fold the paper, Burn it, shred it, bury it, whatever feels right. The ritual is not about forgetting. It is about declaring, I will no longer carry this weight every day. Physical actions can help your heart accept what your mind already knows. You are allowed to move forward. Remember that forgiveness is a process, not a single moment. You may forgive today and feel anger tomorrow. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you are human. Healing moves in spirals, circling back until the lesson is complete. Patience with yourself is part of the journey. Think of forgiveness as planting seeds. At first, the soil looks the same, bare, unchanged. But with time, new growth emerges. Slowly, your inner landscape shifts. Self-hatred gives way to acceptance. Bitterness gives way to peace. Regret gives way to gratitude for the lessons learned. Your past self does not need to be erased. They need to be integrated. They are part of your story, and without them, you would not be here, reading these words, seeking this growth. Thank them for carrying you this far. Forgive them for the mistakes they made. And then, walk forward with the knowledge that you are not defined by what you once did, but by what you choose now. You are not broken. You are becoming. And every act of forgiveness moves you closer to wholeness. You may not realize how much strength hides inside the quiet victories of your life. The world often celebrates only the loud milestones, the promotion, the graduation, the visible transformation. But true self-love deepens when you learn to notice and celebrate the smaller wins, the ones no one else may see, because each of those moments is proof. You are growing. You are choosing differently. You are honoring yourself. Think back to the last time you resisted an old pattern. Maybe you wanted to say yes out of guilt, but you chose no. Maybe you caught the critic in your head and answered back with kindness. Maybe you paused to rest instead of pushing yourself past exhaustion. Did you celebrate, or did you dismiss it as not enough? Too often, we rush past these moments, always hungry for the next big achievement. But the foundation of confidence is built in recognizing what you are already doing well. Celebrating small wins matters because it rewires your brain. When you acknowledge progress, your mind associates growth with pleasure rather than only with strain. You create a positive feedback loop. Each celebration motivates the next step, and the next, until momentum carries you forward. Ignoring small wins does the opposite. It trains your brain to believe nothing is ever enough, and motivation slowly drains away. Start by redefining what a win looks like. A win is not only completing a marathon, it's lacing up your shoes and walking one block. A win is not only writing a book, it's putting down one honest paragraph. A win is not only perfect communication, it's pausing before speaking and choosing words with care. Every step matters. Every effort is a victory. Consider how children learn. When a toddler takes their first step, no one says, "Well, you didn't run a mile, so it doesn't count." They celebrate wildly. Why? Because that small step holds the entire promise of future growth. You deserve the same celebration. Every boundary you hold, every fear you face, every moment of honesty is a step, and those steps add up to transformation. You can make celebration a daily ritual. At the end of each day, ask yourself, what did I do today that honored me? Write it down. Smile at it. Feel the pride of it. Maybe it's as simple as drinking enough water, or speaking kindly to yourself in the mirror. Maybe it's as big as making a difficult decision. By noticing these, you create a trail of evidence. proof that you are capable, consistent, resilient. The critic may scoff. That's nothing. Don't get lazy. But celebration is not laziness. It is fuel. You are not lowering standards by acknowledging progress. You are reinforcing your capacity to keep going. Imagine trying to climb a mountain without ever pausing to look back at how far you've come. The journey would feel endless. But when you stop, breathe, and see the valley below, you find renewed strength to continue. Think about your own life. Perhaps you once struggled to speak your truth, and now you've begun to share honestly with a close friend. That is a win. Perhaps you once neglected your health, and now you take regular walks. That is a win. Perhaps you once drowned in self-criticism, and now you catch yourself and choose kinder words. That is a win. Each one deserves recognition. Celebration also deepens self-trust. Every time you acknowledge your progress, you reinforce the message. I can rely on myself. I keep showing up. That trust becomes the bedrock of confidence. You stop waiting for external validation because you've already given yourself recognition. You can even practice celebration physically. Smile when you notice a win. Say out loud, I did that. Do a small gesture. Clap your hands. Place your hand over your heart. Breathe deeply. The body remembers these cues, and over time, they become anchors of pride and joy. Consider the power of gratitude and celebration combined. Gratitude says, thank you for what I've done. Celebration says, I'm proud of what I've done. Together, they transform your inner world from scarcity to abundance. You stop obsessing over what's missing and start recognizing the richness already here. Celebrating small wins also helps dismantle perfectionism. Perfectionism whispers, it only counts if it's flawless. But when you celebrate small victories, you prove that progress matters more than perfection. You honor effort, not just outcome. And in doing so, you free yourself to try more, risk more, grow more, because mistakes are no longer evidence of failure, but part of the journey. Think of resilience again. Resilience is built not in dramatic moments, but in consistent practice. Each time you celebrate, you reinforce resilience. You tell yourself, I have what it takes to continue. This mindset prepares you for larger challenges because you already believe in your capacity. Let's ground this in a scenario. Imagine you've been practicing saying no. One day, a colleague asks you to take on extra work. Your heart races. Your old pattern screams yes, but you breathe and you say, I can't take that on right now. That's it. A small sentence. Later, instead of brushing it aside, you pause, you smile, you celebrate, you whisper, I did it. That moment of recognition strengthens your courage to do it again. Or picture yourself battling negative self-talk. You look in the mirror and hear, you look awful. But for the first time, you answer, I'm learning to appreciate myself. It feels awkward, shaky, but it's a win. If you celebrate that response, you're more likely to repeat it next time. These celebrations don't require an audience. They require only your awareness. Of course, you can share them with supportive people, friends who cheer your growth, mentors who see your effort. But the most important applause is your own. When you clap for yourself, you stop living for the applause of others. Over time, the accumulation of small wins becomes undeniable. You look back and realize you've built habits, boundaries, confidence, and resilience, all because you kept noticing, kept celebrating. The small bricks formed a wall of strength. The small notes became a symphony of change. So tonight, Before you close your eyes, pause and ask, what did I do today that honored me? Write it, whisper it, celebrate it. Each answer is a thread in the tapestry of your growth, and as those threads weave together, they create a picture of a life lived in love, not just love from others, but love from yourself. You don't need to wait for the world to recognize you. Begin recognizing yourself now. Every small win is a seed of self-respect, and when you water those seeds with celebration, they grow into the confidence that will carry you through anything. You've spent so much of your energy on survival, meeting obligations, fulfilling duties, carrying responsibilities, that joy can feel like an afterthought. Maybe you've told yourself, I'll enjoy life when things calm down, when I achieve more, when I finally deserve it. But joy is not a luxury to be earned someday. It is a necessity to be cultivated now. Investing in joy is one of the clearest ways to show yourself love, because it reminds you that your life is not only about enduring, it is also about living. Think about how your days would feel if joy were prioritized, not just occasional bursts on holidays or rare weekends, but woven into the rhythm of your life. Small sparks throughout your week that remind you why it's worth being here. When you invest in joy, you feed the part of you that longs for aliveness, creativity, play, and that part is essential. Without it, you become drained, robotic, detached from yourself. With it, you glow with authenticity. So what does it mean to invest in joy? It means identifying the activities, environments, and connections that genuinely light you up, and then protecting time and space for them. Maybe it's painting, hiking, cooking, writing, singing, gardening, playing an instrument, learning something new. Maybe it's laughter with friends, silence in nature, or simply sitting with a good book. The point isn't what the activity is. The point is how it makes you feel. More present, more alive, more connected to yourself. The challenge is that life rarely hands you free time on a silver platter. If you wait until all the work is done, joy will always be postponed. That's why you must actively create space for it, just as you would for any priority. You wouldn't skip eating or sleeping indefinitely. Joy deserves the same respect. It sustains your spirit, the way food sustains your body. You may feel guilty for prioritizing joy. The voice inside might say, you should be working. You don't have time. This is frivolous. But joy is not frivolous. It's fuel. Without it, your productivity suffers, your relationships strain, your mental health declines. With it, you return to your tasks renewed, more creative, more resilient. Investing in joy is not an escape from responsibility. It is what makes you capable of carrying responsibility without collapsing. Consider how joy connects you back to your body. When you dance, when you laugh, when you walk in sunlight, you remember that your body is not only a tool for labor, but a vessel for experience. Joy heals the split between mind and body. It teaches you to inhabit your life fully, instead of merely thinking about it. Joy also strengthens resilience. When you've built a reservoir of joyful moments, setbacks feel less consuming. You know life is not only hardship, because you have tasted delight. Even in difficulty, you can recall those moments of laughter, of creativity, of wonder. They remind you that pain is not the whole story. Practical steps can help you nurture joy. Create a joy list. Write down activities, people, and places that reliably make you feel alive. Keep it nearby. When you feel drained or disconnected, choose something from the list. even if only for 10 minutes. Over time, you train yourself to reach for joy instead of numbing distractions. Joy thrives in presence. You cannot fully experience it if your mind is racing ahead or replaying the past. That's why rituals like mindful breathing, savoring meals slowly, or noticing beauty in your surroundings amplify joy. They slow you down enough to let pleasure sink in. Think of a child at play. They are not worried about tomorrow or yesterday. They are absorbed in the moment, the toy, the laughter, the imagination. You still have that capacity. It may be buried under responsibility, but it can be uncovered by choosing to engage fully in whatever brings you delight. Another way to invest in joy is through creativity. Creativity is not reserved for artists. It is the human impulse to make, to express, to transform. Cooking a meal, rearranging a room, humming a tune, these are acts of creation. When you create, you tap into a flow that transcends worry. You remember that you are not only a consumer of life, but also a contributor. Joy also grows when you share it. Laughter with a friend, a shared meal, a spontaneous adventure. These moments expand joy because they connect you. Humans are wired for connection, and joy is amplified in community. Of course, you don't need others to access joy, but when shared, it multiplies. Sometimes, joy comes in quiet, sitting by a window as rain falls, watching the sky shift at sunset, drinking tea slowly. These moments remind you that joy doesn't need to be loud. It can be subtle, intimate, gentle, and still profound. You may resist joy because it feels unsafe. If you've known pain, part of you may believe joy will be snatched away, that it's risky to relax. But avoiding joy doesn't prevent loss. It only guarantees deprivation. Choosing joy, even knowing it won't last forever, is an act of courage. It says, "I will taste life fully, even if it changes tomorrow." Imagine your life as a garden. If you plant only duty and survival, the soil becomes dry. But when you plant joy, color bursts forth. Flowers bloom alongside the sturdy trees of responsibility. The garden becomes not only functional, but beautiful. So ask yourself, when was the last time I felt pure joy? What was I doing? Who was I with? How can I create more of those moments? Then take one step this week. Schedule an activity. Reach out to someone. Set aside guilt. Joy is not selfish. Joy is not wasteful. Joy is your birthright. And the more you invest in it, the more you affirm your worth. Because to give yourself joy is to declare, "My life is meant to be lived, not just endured." You start to realize that your environment shapes you more than you admit. The voices you hear, the attitudes you absorb, the standards you witness, all of these leave fingerprints on your mind. You may believe you are entirely self-determined, but notice how your mood shifts after a conversation with someone who constantly complains. Notice how your energy lifts when you spend time with a friend who believes in you. Relationships are not neutral. They either drain or nourish. And if you are learning to love yourself, you must also learn to surround yourself wisely. Think of yourself as a plant. Some soils help you grow tall and strong. Others stunt your roots. Some environments provide sunlight. Others keep you in shadow. In the same way, your well-being depends on the people and spaces you choose. Loving yourself means choosing environments that align with your values and support your growth, even if that means letting go of what feels familiar. Begin by asking, who around me encourages authenticity? Who celebrates my boundaries instead of resenting them? Who listens without judgment? These are the people who deserve more of your time. Now ask, Who makes me feel small? Who consistently dismisses my needs or mocks my growth? Who leaves me drained instead of renewed? These relationships may require distance, or at least clearer boundaries. This does not mean cutting people off at the first sign of difficulty. Every relationship has moments of tension. The difference is whether those moments lead to repair and respect, or to repeated patterns of dismissal. Surrounding yourself wisely is about patterns, not perfection. There is courage in admitting that some connections no longer serve you. Perhaps a friendship built on shared negativity has become heavy. Perhaps a relationship that once offered comfort now resists your growth. Releasing or reshaping these connections is painful, but staying in them can be even more costly. You deserve to be surrounded by people who want you to thrive, not just survive. Consider also the importance of mentors and role models. When you spend time with people who embody qualities you aspire to, kindness, resilience, authenticity, you absorb their example. You learn through presence as much as through words. Seek out communities, books, spaces that reflect the life you want to build. Let their energy remind you of what's possible. Surrounding yourself wisely also means curating your digital environment. Social media feeds filled with comparison and negativity erode self-love. Feeds filled with inspiration, learning, and authentic voices uplift. Ask yourself, does what I consume make me feel lighter or heavier? Choose intentionally. What you scroll shapes how you see yourself. Sometimes the hardest relationship to shift is with family. You may love them deeply, yet recognize that certain dynamics harm your growth. In these cases, boundaries become vital. You may not cut ties, but you can limit exposure to toxic behaviors. You can decide what topics are off limits, how much time you spend, and how you respond. Loving yourself doesn't mean abandoning family. It means protecting yourself within those ties. There is also the relationship you hold with community. Humans are wired for connection, for belonging. Isolation weakens resilience, but the quality of your community matters more than the quantity. 10 shallow connections may leave you lonely. 1 deep, supportive friendship can transform your life. Invest where depth is possible. Think about how you feel after meaningful interactions. Your chest feels lighter, your mind calmer, your spirit encouraged. That is the sign of a nourishing connection. Compare it with how you feel after draining interactions. Tight chest, heavy mood, self-doubt. These physical cues are not random. They are your body telling you where love exists and where it doesn't. It is not selfish to prioritize uplifting relationships. It is strategic. You become like the people you spend the most time with. Their attitudes seep into your thoughts. Their habits influence your choices. Surround yourself with those who remind you of your worth, and you will more easily remember it yourself. This does not mean expecting others to be perfect. It means choosing people who are willing to grow alongside you, who respect your humanity, even when it's messy. Healthy relationships are not free of conflict. They are rich in repair. They are spaces where honesty is possible, without fear of abandonment. Imagine a circle of people around you, each one a mirror. Some mirrors distort, making you believe you are smaller than you are. Others reflect you clearly, reminding you of your true strength. Which mirrors will you keep closest? Which will you step away from? This choice shapes not only your self-image but your future. Practical steps help. Make a list of 3 people who energize you. Intentionally spend more time with them. Call, meet, share experiences. Then list 3 people or environments that consistently drain you. Decide one small boundary you can set with each. Maybe it's shorter calls, fewer visits, or redirecting conversations. These adjustments accumulate, shifting your life toward nourishment. Remember also that you are part of others' environments. Ask yourself, do I uplift, encourage, respect? As you surround yourself wisely, also strive to be the kind of presence you seek. Mutual growth is the hallmark of healthy connection. There will be grief in this process. Letting go of relationships, even unhealthy ones, hurts. You may miss the familiarity, the shared history, but grief is not proof you made the wrong choice. It is simply part of transition. With time, the space left behind becomes fertile ground for new, healthier connections. Surrounding yourself wisely is not about elitism. It's about honesty. It's about admitting that your heart, your energy, your growth are too important to place in careless hands. You deserve relationships that remind you of your dignity, not ones that demand you forget it. So look around you. Notice who claps when you win, who listens when you struggle, who respects when you say no. Invest more deeply there. And as you do, you'll find that self-love grows, not only inside you, but also in the echo of the voices around you. Voices that remind you, again and again, that you are worthy, you are capable, you are loved. You've carried the pressure of perfection for far too long. The endless checklist: be flawless, never stumble, always perform. You've measured yourself against impossible standards, convinced that only when you reach them will you be worthy of rest, love, or pride. But the truth is, perfection is an illusion. It keeps you running on a treadmill that never stops, reaching for a horizon that always moves farther away. Self-love blossoms only when you decide to step off that treadmill and embrace progress over perfection. Think of how many times perfectionism has silenced you. You didn't start the project because you feared it wouldn't be good enough. You didn't share your thoughts because you feared judgment. You didn't rest because you believed you hadn't earned it yet. Each moment of hesitation was a form of self-abandonment, a way of telling yourself, you are not allowed to exist until you meet an impossible standard. But what if you allowed yourself to exist as you are? Not perfect, not finished, just in progress. Progress is real, measurable, alive. Perfection is sterile, unreachable, a mirage. The more you chase it, the more you feel inadequate. The more you honor progress, the more you feel alive. Progress means asking, am I moving closer to authenticity, even by one step? If the answer is yes, that is enough. It doesn't matter if you stumble, pause, or take detours. Growth is not a straight line. It is a spiral. Sometimes you revisit old lessons. Sometimes you slow down. Sometimes you leap forward. But every part of the spiral is movement. Every part matters. When you embrace progress, you release the shame of imperfection. You begin to see mistakes not as evidence of failure, but as signs of effort. You stop punishing yourself for being human and start honoring yourself for being courageous enough to try. That shift transforms your inner world. You become your own encourager rather than your own saboteur. Perfectionism often hides behind productivity. It whispers, work harder, do more, prove yourself. But productivity without rest is just self-erasure. Progress recognizes balance. Some days, progress means pushing forward. Other days, progress means pausing, healing, allowing space. Both are valid. Both are necessary. Practical ways to embrace progress include setting realistic goals. Instead of demanding immediate mastery, break tasks into steps. Celebrate each step. If you want to build healthier habits, don't demand an instant overhaul. Start with one change. Drink more water. Move your body for 10 minutes. Write a single paragraph. Each success reinforces your belief in your capacity, and that belief becomes the engine of lasting growth. Another practice is to reframe language. Replace "I should be perfect" with "I am learning." Replace "I failed" with "I discovered what doesn't work." Replace "I'm not enough yet" with "I'm enough and I'm growing." These shifts may seem small, but they transform the way your brain interprets experience. Think about how you treat a child learning to read. You wouldn't scold them for not mastering the book in one day. You'd celebrate each word, each sentence, each attempt. Why not treat yourself with the same compassion? You are still learning, still practicing, still growing, and that deserves patience, not punishment. Embracing progress also frees you from comparison. When you chase perfection, you inevitably compare yourself to others who appear further ahead. But progress is personal. Your path is yours alone. Someone else's chapter 20 is not a fair comparison to your chapter 3. The only meaningful question is, am I more aligned today than I was yesterday? Perfectionism robs you of joy in the present. Progress returns it. When you honor progress, you find pride in today's effort rather than postponing pride until some future outcome. You allow yourself to enjoy the journey, not just the destination. You breathe easier because you are no longer fighting an impossible battle. Imagine this shift in daily life. You're writing, and the words don't flow perfectly. Instead of quitting, you write anyway, reminding yourself that messy drafts lead to polished work. You're learning a skill, and you stumble. Instead of declaring yourself hopeless, you note what you've learned and keep going. Each choice builds momentum. Each choice strengthens self-trust. Remember, progress is not about speed, it's about direction. Some days, progress will be bold leaps. Other days, it will be small steps. And sometimes, progress will simply be refusing to give up. That, too, is victory. As you practice this mindset, you begin to notice freedom. You wake without the heavy demand to be flawless. You move with more curiosity, more courage. You try new things because you no longer fear imperfection will ruin you. You discover that joy lives not at the end of perfection, but along the path of progress. And perhaps the most profound gift of embracing progress is this. You finally allow yourself to be human. You stop chasing an impossible version of yourself and start embracing the real one. And in that embrace, love grows. Take a deep breath. You've walked through a journey that began with awakening your worth and ended with releasing perfection. Along the way, you silenced the critic, honored your needs, built resilience, practiced gratitude, reclaimed joy, and surrounded yourself with voices that uplift. Each section was not a command, but an invitation to stop abandoning yourself and start choosing yourself, again and again. Perhaps as you listened, you recognized places where you've been unkind to yourself. Perhaps you remembered times you said yes when you meant no. Times you believed you weren't enough. Times you demanded perfection before allowing love. That's okay. Awareness is not failure. It is the beginning of freedom. From here, the path is not about flawless execution. It is about practice. Practice speaking gently to yourself. Practice setting boundaries. Practice celebrating small wins. Practice forgiving the past. Practice resting without guilt. Practice choosing joy. Each act is a thread, and together, they weave a new fabric of self-love. There will be days when you forget, when the critic grows loud, when old habits resurface. On those days, return to the truth you've uncovered. You are worthy as you are. You don't need to earn love. You need only to allow it, beginning with yourself. So let this closing be a reminder. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are not behind. You are on your way. And every step you take toward loving yourself is a step toward freedom, peace, and joy. Start today with one breath, one choice, one act of kindness toward yourself. That is enough. That is always enough.